Out of the street corners they scream. You knew it was coming. You've been waiting for this for months. Rumour hardened into fear and now they scream at you. The sirens, their hysterical wail tearing through the white noise of the city. And you run. You run to pick up those things that can never be replaced. A picture of them in the days when they still loved you. Your mother's wedding ring. And then you turn to your shelf of games. You only have room for 5. 5 games for Doomsday. 5 Games for Doomsday is a show in which board game personalities are thrust into a cabin in the woods to outrun an oncoming disaster, but can only take 5 of their games with them. But which will they choose? My guest this week is a singer and aspiring martial artist, and she also fulfills a unique position in the board gaming world. She's an agent for game designers. Her agency, White Castle Games, has had a hand in publishing over 130 games with almost 40 different publishers. My guest this week is Anita Landgraf. Anita, welcome to the cabin.
Thanks for having me.
And so I guess my first question is, how difficult was it for you to choose the 5 games to take to the cabin?
Less difficult than I thought, but I get asked a lot about favorite games and so on, so I decided that I'd just say what pops up first thing, because the favorite games change anyway, so I'll just say what I really like playing at the time.
So there's no sort of sentimental thinking, there's no sort of curation, it's just games that you like?
Yeah, well, I mean, there on this list there are games which are or at least one particular game which is very sentimental to me, because it's very tightly connected to my times at university. But I mean, every game has a history once you've played it, right? So I don't know.
And so, sort of, what are you like as a person? Do you attach yourself to objects, or are you quite minimalistic? How would you feel about sort of, all of your possessions being burnt up in apocalypse and only having a few things left?
That's an interesting question, because you see, my boyfriend, with whom I live together with, he doesn't need objects at all. So I had to really get rid of a lot of them when we moved in together. And he makes me aware that actually you don't need that many objects around yourself to remember stuff. But I still think that I like touching items and so that remind me of a specific situation or of specific people that I feared I might forget if I don't have that item anymore. So that also goes for games. Now, what would happen if everything burned down? I don't know. I'm a super positive person, actually. So I think I would just start piling up new stuff, maybe. I don't know.
And sort of, how do you think you feel? I mean, we're recording this in March during the coronavirus crisis, so we're having a good dry run at it. But how do you think you'd feel sort of in the situation where it's only you and a few people alone? Are you a gregarious person? Do you like to be around a lot of people, or are you okay with just a few people or alone?
I always thought that I'm someone who needs a lot of people around, but these last 2 weeks of isolation measures made me realize that I can live with only a handful very well, as long as I don't know that someone in the future I might find them again. So that's my optimist side, that even in when all goes down, that maybe even though I'm only with a small group, maybe at the end of the tunnel we'll find the other groups.
So I want to go back to the beginning then. And so when did games enter your life? You said in the notes that you sent to me that your whole family played them and you played games with your grandma and things.
Yeah, totally. So one of the first things I remember is me and my father playing, or like, it's not actually a game, but we split a deck of traditional card games, like German style card games, and we would flip cards and see who has the higher card, and that player wins and takes the other card, and you put it underneath your deck, and then you flip the next card. So it's actually not a game, it's just luck, and you just learn how the values of the cards work. So that's maybe the first thing I remember of games. And so my dad prepared me very early. That was before I could read or so. So that was very early, and he prepared me to play Schnapsen, which is a traditional Austrian card game, at a very young age. And I also played this traditional game with my grandma, and then my older brother, played a lot of board games with me when I was young and still now. And also my mom was the typical rummy player, like the whole family sits around the table on holidays and we all play a card game, but actually we chat while we do it, which didn't work so well with my father's style of playing games because he's really serious. And my mom is more one of those light players, but we still had a good time.
And do those moments with your family stick out as sort of really nice parts of your childhood? Do you remember them fondly?
Yeah, totally. But I mean, I think I remember most of my childhood very fondly. So playing games was a regular part of it. But I'm lucky with my parents and my family in general. So it was a good childhood for me.
Whereabouts in Austria did you grow up?
I grew up in a small place called Hönigtal, or I call it the Wild Hönigtal, in Steiermark, in Styria, in the southern part of Austria, which is close to the Slovenian border. So there's lots of hills and forest, and it's close to the capital of that district called Graz. So we have a lot of countryside, but there's also a city. It's a small city. It's 200 and something thousand, but you have both sides to see.
And was it a very sort of idealistic childhood, running through the hills, kind of like Heidi?
I don't think I was like Heidi. I think we were very mischievous most of the time. But yeah, I don't know if I think about my friends with kids now who are living in a city and worried about what to do with their kids and where to go with them. I remember it that we were a lot of the time alone, or I don't know, maybe my mom watched us from the balcony and supervised everything. But in my memory, we were like climbing trees and rolling down hills and I don't know where, and came back with lots of little bruises and so and it was fun, and I had the impression that we had a lot of freedom, which I think might not be as possible if you grow up in a city.
And so I lived in Vienna for quite a long time, and I remember I worked in a bar, and I remember these people in the corner, they would come in on a Sunday and play this odd game with weird playing cards, and I asked what it was, and it was Schnapsen. And these people were reasonably young. They weren't sort of old folks or anything. Are games like Schnapsen, these traditional games, popular in Austria?
Schnapsen is totally popular in Austria. And among the old as well as among the young. Maybe, I don't know, maybe not as much as a decade or two ago. But I think, yeah. Still, I think even the young play it now. It's I don't know. It's something in your genes. It's like learning a nursery rhyme or so. It's something that you learn at least in the country. As I didn't grow up in Vienna, although I live here now, I'm not sure how attached everything like this culture is to the Viennese. But as so many people from the country moved to Vienna at some point in their life, maybe the guys you saw playing there were from Steiermark or from somewhere else. Anyhow, so yeah, I think it's just part of the culture. It's something that it's one of those cliches that Austrians never mention when somebody asks them what makes up Austria. I think they usually say Lipizzaner and Mozartkugel and Sachertorte and all that stuff, and maybe the mountains. But actually, I think something that unites all parts of Austria is that we all play this card game, which is crazy because there's no, like every Bundesland, so every region has their own hymn and they have their own I don't know, style of clothes, like traditional style of clothes and so on, but they all play this card game. It's pretty amazing.
And so I remember, I think it's the Ninth District, but I saw a shop once called Brotenspieler, and I never went in all the time I lived in Vienna. But you worked there, and that was a board game cafe, and that was there as long as I remember being in Vienna. So that's 2003. So that's a pretty early game cafe. And you worked there. What was that experience like, working in a game cafe?
I loved it. The bar has been around since 1994, I think. They opened it, and the owner, Axel, it's in the 8th district, by the way, and he back then he liked playing board games, and he was like, yeah, why don't you just drink beers and play board games at the same time? I think people could like that. And then they started this place. And to be honest, before I started working there, I never entered either. I passed by with the tram or with the bike a lot of times, and I don't know, I never, even though I was a super gamer at the time, it never attracted me to walk in. It's weird. But then when I started working there, it was paradise. It was, I don't know, I was a super nerdy gamer at the time, so I used to play RPGs, and I grew up playing Blood Bowl and I don't know, Hero Quest and all these kind of, and a lot of Ameritrash and Munchkin. And then I got in there, and there were all these German type board games, which I actually didn't play that much at the time. And so I learned about, I don't know, Carcassonne and Catan and Alhambra and all these German style board games, and loved it. So when there were a lot of guests, I really enjoyed it because we worked 2 people there, and so we served the drinks and prepared the food, and in between we always had the time to recommend some games or like explain in 5 sentences how you play this and that. So it was a really good vibe, and people I worked together with were wonderful, every single one of them. And it also started my addiction for Tichu. It's thinking about it. It's been a wonderful time, really. I love it. Good place.
So going on then, your first game is the game you just mentioned, and this is Tichu. So why are you taking this to the cabin with you?
Well, Tichu, it has a practical reason because it's actually a regular deck of poker cards with some extra cards, so you can play lots of games with this deck of cards. That's a very good reason to take a game, I think. And then also, I just love the game. It's my favorite trick-taking game, and I have so many good memories of it from that time in the bar. So it was actually my colleague Andy who taught me how to play that game, and it's a weird thing because when I worked there, I was kind of the manager of the bar. Like I handled I organized some stuff, and I also hired Andy, who taught me that game. And Andy is working now with me at the agency because I hired him again then afterwards. And yeah, we just, I don't know, got addicted to Tichu, and we organized competitions, and we had a tournament going on, like the Austrian championships, and Andy created this whole ELO-like scoring system, and we had we played even after hours. So we at a certain point we had some troubles with the police because we had to close at 2. But very often we would hang out longer and then usually play Tichu with some regular customers or the colleagues or so. And we closed the doors, but there was still light. And then the police would come and close us down. But there was a second room, and then we'd go upstairs to the second room and turn off the lights in the first room and outside. But then we'd put a 7 of Swords card in the window, so that when people would pass by who knew us, they knew that Tichu is being played in the back room. So they would then call and we would let them in. And sometimes at 4 a.m, there would be a second or third table playing Tichu that wasn't there when we had closed the bar. So, and then, then we'd go having breakfast together at 7 a.m. It was wild. Yeah, I still kind of finished my studies somehow. But yeah,
and so do you think it was those times with your family playing those kind of games that drew you to a game like Tichu?
Maybe. I don't know. Maybe that's why I'm so fond of trick-taking games, because I really like trick-taking games. I like that atmosphere that a card game creates when you sit around the table and you try to focus and you try to remember and you try to anticipate what are the other players' options. And actually, it's so limited. I mean, it's only 52 or 56 cards in case of Tichu, and you already have a whole bunch of them. But there's still so many things that can happen. And it's always so exciting if you are like, okay, I know this is a risky move to make. I know this is a risky card or a combination to play. But if it works, then I'm a superhero. And then trying that, and then it works, it's hilarious. And even trying it and it doesn't work, and your team partner like stands up from the table and shouts at you how stupid you are and how could you ever do that, that's far too risky. It's very emotional and a whole lot of fun.
So I want to go on now and talk about sort of you becoming a game agent. So how did you first hear about White Castle Games? You said in the notes that you were headhunted from Brot und Spiele.
Yeah, kind of, but I was headhunted inside Brot und Spiele because Ronald Hofstetter, the one who found the agency, he held his weekly gathering with the game designers who worked together with in the Brot und Spiele. They come in on Mondays, and Monday was usually quite a quiet day. There were not so many people around. And so when I had the time between like working, I tested games with them, and then I started to like proofread their prototype rules, and I was just super interested because I'd never heard of anything like that before. At the time, I didn't, even though I was very interested in games, I didn't even think about who's the author of this and that game and who's the publisher, because the only publishers I knew was probably Ravensburger, Piatnik, and Pegasus. And the only game design I think I know was Steve Jackson. So it really didn't come to my mind that, oh yeah, right, there has to be someone who creates all this crazy stuff. And then Ronnie asked me if I wanted to like work for him part-time too. And so I worked part-time at the Brot und Spiele and part-time in the agency. And then I moved more and more to the agency side. And yeah, until he finally like asked me, or he gave me like the choice to either lose my job or buy the company. And that's how I ended up with owning the agency now.
And so those people who would come into Brot und Spiele and test their games, who were they? What kind of designers were around at that time?
Oh, that's interesting. That's, for example, Alexander Pfister was around at the time. His first game was published with the help of White Castle Games. That was still with Ronald being the boss. And then also Andreas Pelikan, whom Alex has also worked together with, and Arno Steinwender, who is very, loyal to White Castle. He does some projects on his own, but we've been working together for such a long time, and it's great to work with someone who still has so many ideas after so many years of being a board game designer. And also Johannes Krenner, for example, who's responsible for the Game of Thrones game now with Cosmos. And I don't know, I think these are the ones that got stuck. Oh, there's also Christoph Reiser, who's one of the authors of Smart 10, who's been around also for such a long time. So I started to work there in 2009. And and most of these people I just named, they are still attached to the agency, and we're still working together in some projects. So that's pretty cool.
And so, what was the process of buying the agency? Was it very expensive, and how did you get the money for that?
That was my first question, actually, after Ronnie asked me if I wanted to buy it. I was like, yeah, well, I think so, but I don't have any money. And he was like, oh yeah, I thought about that. I can lend you the money. So he actually lended me his own money to buy his company, which is maybe a weird thing to do, but it worked pretty well. And I just recently bought off that loan, and I paid back all of that loan. So now it's really entirely 100% mine. And yeah, I couldn't have afforded it. I mean, it was not the price of, I don't know, a super, like, I don't know, Ubisoft or so, but as I was still a student and part-time working, I just didn't have the money for it. And I'm happy I did it. I was super scared being an owner of a company. And sometimes I still am, but the fun part is the bigger part.
And why did he sell it to you? Why did he ask you? What is there about you that made him think, I can sell my company onto this person?
I guess you'd have to ask that him. But from what he told me, I think that he had this plan of handing it over to someone for a longer time, because he is someone who likes to start things, and once they get running, he wants to start the next thing. He's really good at that, and so he was looking for someone who could do that, and I think he was like checking out different people, and it seemed that the way I handled everything was the way he thought it's good. So I don't know, you might have to interview him as well, I guess, to know the whole details.
So your next game then is Die Crew, and this is a trick-taking game. How is this different from other trick-taking games?
It's fully cooperative, which is crazy, and I love that. That was when I had a lot of second thoughts about putting this on the list too, because it's another card game, it's another trick-taking game. And I think that maybe if you asked me in a year or so, maybe I wouldn't put it on the list. But right now, I still enjoy playing it a lot. And what is so good about it is that it teaches people who don't have a clue about trick-taking games how to efficiently play trick-taking games. Because, with these games like Tichu, I mean, I don't want to lie about that. I can become very serious. I'm not playing card games in that moment. I'm playing cards. So if you want to have Tichu in like post-apocalypse, you have to have good players for that. And as maybe you can't choose who's going with you because it just happens all so quick. If you have the crew with you, then it slowly gets people in the correct mindset and strategy and whatever of playing trick-taking games. And then when you're through with the crew, and maybe at one time when you're actually really played it over and over again and seen it all, then it's time for Tichu.
So, I mean, I'm sure you've thought, anyone who plays games for any length of time has had that thought flash across their brain, what game would I design? What would I want to design? So I assume you must have thought about designing games, and, it seems that you really are drawn to trick-taking games. Do you think you'd like to design a trick-taking game one day?
I'm not a game designer. That's really a different skill set. And I tell you why, because I work in a lot of game projects, which includes working on the mechanics and working on the design or the combination of theme and mechanics and so on. So I do work in game design, but I'm not a game designer because I don't have these initial ideas. I'm not capable of coming up with that spark of an idea of a game. So what I'm good at is working together with designers who have that initial idea and working on it. But I don't think I would ever come up with something myself. So I don't think it would be. If it would be, I don't think it would be a trick-taking game, because I'd be too scared to bust something up that I like so much. So maybe it would rather be a roll and move or something where I don't care if it's a bad game that comes out.
So I want to talk now about what you do as a game agent. So give us a rundown of what your usual day looks like.
So my usual day starts with coffee and then emails. And as I am an agent, I connect people, I connect ideas also, like that people have. So I do a lot of communication work. And that starts from checking on, hey Ben, how's the game idea, blah blah, going? Did you find a solution for this and that problem? Do you need any help? Do you have any new version to test? So I check on the designers, or I check with the publishers and ask them, hey, what about this and that prototype that we sent in a couple of weeks ago? Do you already have feedback for that? Did you already have the time to play it? And then I coordinate my testers. So I have testers and ask them how far are your tests going? Will you be able to send a report about the game in time? Should we find another test group, play it all together? What are your thoughts about that? And then sum up their reports and send them to the designers. So that's a big part, all of this communication and coordinating stuff. And then, of course, we do play a lot of games. We read a lot of rules, and test the games ourselves, either in the office, or we organize test events, like the one that we do once a week with the game designers, and then also others with externals who are not so much games experts, but just regular players. And we do a lot of writing rules together with the authors and try to help them in whatever way they need. So some need help translating stuff, some need help even writing hard texts, some need help with the design. Every designer has a different skill set somehow where he's better at or more comfortable with, and needs us to help with other skills or areas that he's not so comfortable with, or she. And then we do contract work. So if a game designer works together with us, then we represent the total thing. So we also take care of contract negotiations with publishers and make them pay on time as we set in the contract and so on. And then we organize our appointments for fairs, if fairs are gonna be something that happens again. So yeah, it's a broad range of different things. That's why it never gets boring, and there's always something to do. So even if the corona restrictions get worse, we still have so many things that we take care about that we will never get bored.
And so how do you find designers to represent? Do they approach you or do you approach them? Or is it both?
It's both. I mean, I was so lucky. Ronnie had already built up this agency and had already had good contacts with, for example, with the SATs or with a lot of game publishers from all over the world, and with a lot of game designers too. And so I kind of inherited that base. And now it's a mix. So of course we go to events, we go to game designer conventions and see who's there, who's got good ideas. Sometimes publishers even recommend that the designers should contact us if they have, or if they see something in a game concept, but they don't have the time to work more on it, then they sometimes recommend that they maybe should get in touch with us. And also game designers recommend us among each other. And if you Google like we work a lot with newcomers. So as a newcomer, particularly if you are like in the area around Vienna, then if you Google game, I've invented a game, then you very likely will find our website. I know, yeah, and that's also, so there's only one big game publisher in Austria at the moment. There's more coming soon, but that's Piatnik, who kind of prints all those card games that you can buy in the shops. They usually come from them, and of course they get a lot of submissions, and so they also tend to tell people that there is an agency around the corner where they could just go and ask what to do with their game idea.
And so why, if I'm a new aspiring designer, I've got my new game with goblins and fish, why should I come to you rather than go the traditional route of pitching?
Well, you can go the traditional route of pitching. It's just if you're a newcomer, then you will like waste, is such a negative word, but I'll still use it, waste a lot of time like pitching the game to the wrong publishers or pitching it the wrong way. Or maybe there's a flaw in your game that someone who has a lot of experience will immediately spot, but you don't. And so if you take your game to an agency and show it, then we will like try to see through all the like all the shiny, glittery, nice components that you put on top of it, and try to look through it and see, okay, is this a good idea? Is this something that will people enjoy playing for a long time? And also, is there a publisher that's looking for something like that right now, or do I see myself pitching this game and I know this and that publisher might be interested in it? So you get like a big package of experience and expertise that will help you with your very first game. Also, if you don't have a name, it's a bit more complicated to get in touch with several publishers. Not all of them, but I mean, you have to figure they get so many game submissions. They don't have the time. Even if they wanted to, they don't have the time to meet everyone. So they have to select. And of course, if you already have a name and they know that they get some quality from you, then it's easier. But if you don't have a name and it's your very first game and everything you pitch them in your email is, hey, it's a game about goblin and fish, then a lot of them will just politely tell you that you might like try to find another way of showing it, or I don't know. It makes it easier if you work with a professional.
And so, how do you make your money? Do you take it from? Do you take a percentage of the game designer's royalties? Do you take it from the publishers? Yeah, how do you make your money?
Yeah, we take it from the game designers. We get a share of their royalties in case that the game is published. So if you submit your goblins and fish game, and we take it under contract for a certain time period, and we work on it together, we take it to the publishers, we take it to meetings, we pitch it, and in the end, the result is that they all turn it down. Then either we can extend our contract and say, okay, let's give it another shot, maybe let's work a little bit more on the game, do a revision of it, or you could terminate the contract and then all the rights would go back to you and you wouldn't have paid anything for that. But if it gets published, then we get a share of your royalties for the lifetime of the product. So that's our model. So we only get something in case we are successful. So that's the risk we take, that if we find a game that we think is good, but there's still something better out there, and so it doesn't find a home, then we don't make any money out of it at all.
And so what are some of the games that you've helped bring to market then?
Oh, there's so many. I'm just thinking about... So what we worked a lot on recently were Escape Room the games, which are published by Norris in Germany and originally come from Identity Games. We've worked there with different designers on different adventures, but so they contracted us to find someone who could do that work. What I personally really like is our dexterity game Coconuts. which is already a couple of years old, but I still like it a lot. Or Man at Work that's Rita Model's very first game. I always like it when we find female designers because there are not so many out there. And what I right now also really like a lot is Age of Dirt. It's not out in Germany yet. It's a Z-Man game by Johannes Krenner, and with super stunning, perfect components. Even though I hear a lot about Z-Man and their quality of components and blah, but this one is wonderful. It's a super funny worker placement game with stupid workers who don't do what you ask them to most of the time. So that's a good gatekeeper, like a gateway game for if you like that sort of game, but your friends maybe are not so much into it, then you could still play that one with them because it's not so heavy. And as we had with Game of Quotes, which is a game with Cosmos, which we did together with Marc-Uwe Kling, Berlin Kleinkünstler, comedian. It's a game that's based in his book license, The Kangaroo Chronicles. And we also released a new game for that license, which is called the Würfel WG this year, which is a cooperation of Alexander Pfister and Johannes Krenner and Marc-Uwe Kling. And it's just a hilarious, it's a WG simulator. So I shared apartment simulator.
So for the English listeners, that means a shared house simulator.
Thanks. Yeah, that's it. So it's a simple roll and write game, but it makes you remember your times back then when you were still in university.
And so you mentioned there that it's nice to find a female designer because there aren't many. Why do you think that is?
I think on the one hand, it's also getting better. It's getting more and more, and which doesn't answer your question. But I think it's a very it's been a very male hobby for the last decades to be a board gamer. Why is that? I'm not sure about that because I've been a board gamer for all my life, but I tended to be like one of 2 or 3 or so in the RPG club females. I think that a lot of men, particularly when they are adults, have hobbies that don't have a purpose. And I think that a lot of women have hobbies that have a purpose. Like, I do sports because it's good for my health, or I want to, have a perfect body, or I do, knitting because I can make a pullover for my baby, or something like that, or I will paint because then I will have a painting that I can give as a gift to whoever, or hang it on my wall. And I think, maybe that's super exaggerating, but that's my impression, that a lot of women have hobbies that have an outcome that you can share and see. And playing board games has an outcome that is such an insider thing. So you create insider knowledge and insider jokes and a certain, it's like a bond to the people you play it with that is not understandable for anyone who's on the outside. And I think maybe that difference in the majority of hobbies could be a reason why there's not so many people playing games. And of course, if you are not into games, it's unlikely that you will start creating your own game. But that's just one theory.
So your next game then is Root. What attracts you to this game?
Okay, first thing is, of course, the cute illustrations. I like that. I like that they put a war game in such a cute setting. I think that's hilarious and was a very good move they did. I still enjoy playing around with the tokens, with the little birds and the little rabbits. And every time I play it, I take pictures of it and send it to my boyfriend, who doesn't have a clue about the game, but has a lot of pictures of me playing this game. So I really like the general design of it. And mechanic-wise, I love it that it's so diverse. it's so super asymmetric, and you experience a different game every time you play it. Although, I mean, it's a lot of rules to explain in the first place, because you have to know all the rules of the different fractions. But if you played it once, you realize that you don't have to learn so many extra rules for the different factions that you don't know yet. Yeah, and I like that it's very confrontative. It's confrontative. How do you say that?
It's very combative.
Thank you. It's very combative, and it makes me completely fall into my role, and I love it when a game does that. When I'm not thinking about the mathematics behind it, or the when I don't stop counting, like in the second to last round, I start up counting. Oh, if I go there, then I get 3 points. But if I go there, then I get 2 points. But maybe if I roll luckily, then I get an extra point, and so on. It doesn't do that. It's very direct, and it's still not an Ameritrash game.
And so, do you have a particular faction that you enjoy playing? Something that lends itself to your play style? I mean, what kind of gamer are you?
I'm the asshole gamer. I'm the one who's like, oh, I'm so poor. Please, don't like look at that other guy. He's so strong. We need to attack this guy. Somebody has to do something about that. That's maybe also why I like it. I like that kind of games where you can try to make others attacks a third person, and try to sneak your way around that. So even when I don't know, when I play Eclipse, I try to be the one who's like slowly building up my empire in the back, and then building a lot of monoliths or so. And yeah, so factions. I like playing the birds because it's such a unique. It's such a unique way of playing these, because you have to add action cards and say every time it's your turn, and so it becomes more and more and more. But maybe at a certain point you cannot do one of those action that you've programmed like 3 rounds before, and then your whole system crashes and you have to like find a new leader and restart everything. I think that's a very cool idea, for how to play such a faction. And also when I play it, I tend to say a lot of whenever I do something that I think is awesome. But I also like the Rebellion, like the Forest Alliance, because I'm a Star Wars fan and I like the Rebels. And also they have cute mice and bunnies. I don't like the cat because I think I don't like to. I like to start as the underdog, maybe. Maybe the birds are no underdogs. I don't know. I could go on about this forever, so maybe we should just stop it here.
So I want to go on now and talk about, sort of widen our focus and talk about the game industry as a whole, as someone who, deals with kind of every aspect of the game industry. You'll have a good perspective on this. So how healthy do you think the game industry is at the moment?
The game industry as a whole, I think, is very healthy. I mean, healthy in terms of, I think the numbers are not only still growing, but also kind of stable. I mean, of course, the current situation changes a lot because on the one hand, people are like, oh yeah, we should play more board games. But on the other hand, the stores are closed. So not everyone will order online what they might have bought in stores. So this will definitely also affect the board games industry. But a part of that, and if we leave that aside, it's grown in. I think it's grown in 2 ways. Like not only the gamers play more games and also see that the quality of the games is so good that they are okay investing their hobby money into that category, but also like regular players or every now and then players, they see that there's so many fun games there, and every time you have a good experience playing a good game, will make it more likely that you buy another one and buy another one. And so the fact that the quality of the games has been so much better, has so increased so much, as so many good games out there right now, I think that's a good indicator that this will not turn around soon. This will not turn bad.
And so you've been in the industry since 2009, and people talk about sort of from about, the turn of the last decade, there being a sort of golden age of board games. What have been the major changes in the industry over the decade that you've worked in it?
I think that what I'd call globalization maybe is one big thing, even though it was already very connected when I started. This has increased. So it's easy for a German publisher to get access to a Japanese game designer and then make the game with a French illustrator. So all these communication tools that so many people find out about right now, many of these have been used by people from our industry for a long time to get people connected and together. And so I think that is one reason why the games have become more interesting, because there was always this classification of German games and later Euro games and the Ameritrash, and they have their peculiarity. So the German games were maybe a bit drier than something you'd expect from a US publisher like FFG or so. And then getting more designers and more publishers and more people working on these games together in the same rooms or in the same virtual rooms, or even in the fairs, and then helping each other out where they have their lacks or so. So, okay, this is a very good game construct from a German designer. It's a bit dry. Why don't we have one of our internals from a publisher, work a bit around and see if we can get more, spirit out of it, or make a better theme around it or so. And then also I think the French, for example, from my perspective, have a very different approach of the design of games, like the illustration. They have very often more sophisticated illustrations than I think German games had for a very long time. And that's also something that German publishers could see, and more French games came into our markets. That's also something you could track if you look at the Spiel des Jahres winners. There's a lot more French involved in the last 10 years. Anyhow, so I think you could see that, and you could use that to spot maybe your weaknesses and make them better, take them out, or replace them with something that's better. So I think that's one reason. Also, the whole industry professionalized more.
What does that mean, professionalized?
Like not seeing yourself, or not seeing yourself being a board game designer as a hobby thing to do is already a different mindset than, oh yeah, I have 2 hours a week for working on a board game, and then I just hand it out to some publishers and see what they do with it. It's not that easy to create a good game. So if you are aware that what you do is not just a side product of your fun time, but this is work for a lot of people, and it has to have a certain quality level that will, having that mindset will lead you to.
And so people talk a lot about a bubble and it bursting and the game industry collapsing. Firstly, do you see that happening? And secondly, do you think there are too many games coming out?
Yeah, I must admit, of course, there are many games coming out. I even think that sometimes there are too many. For example, I must say my blind spot is Kickstarter, because it's too much going on there, and I don't have the time to really look at all the games that come out from Kickstarter. But I think there are lots of games published which maybe the world doesn't need. Yep, that's true. But I don't think that's a bubble, because if we stop producing, like if you wouldn't produce that or publish that game or that game, like if you produced a quarter less, then I think the games that were published would sell higher numbers. So I think, I mean, of course, there's a lot of small companies which you never know if they survive for a long time or not. But there are some awesome small companies who I hope will survive because they have a very good quality of their games and a very cool perspective on what they want to do. And I'm crossing my fingers that the good ones will
So
survive.
your next game then is one that you helped bring to market. This is Coconuts. And so in your notes that you sent me, you said this, you chose this for a practical purpose. What was the concept behind that?
Well, it includes catapult launchers, monkey-shaped catapult launchers, and we could launch coconuts with. So you could maybe use this as a weapon. Also, it comes with a lot of cups, which you could use to catch rain falling. So you can have water with that. Maybe use it for some other purposes. So it's I think it's a cool equipment to have, and it's also a cool, awesome, fun game. And you can make like different setups of it and try different you can, when you watch kids playing it, they usually come up with more ways to play it with than we recommend in the rules. So I think it's also very a creative. It has a creative possibility.
How do you feel about dexterity games in general? Are you a fan?
Yes, I am. I think that I don't know. It's also one of those. One of the reasons for that is that you can usually they're easily explained, and you just put them on the table, and you have a fair idea of what you have to do. So it doesn't scare people off who maybe don't play so many games. And this is something I learned when I used to work in the Brot und Spiele. But it's good to have some games around that you don't have to learn a lot of rules to play, and get people involved in games at all, and then maybe later they are interested in learning something more complicated too. And also after playing, I don't know, a whole day of complicated games, you might just want to have a fun game of just shooting coconuts around. So yeah, I do like dexterity games a lot, and I think everyone should have some in their collection.
And do you think us serious gamers tend to be a little bit snobby around games like this?
Yeah, I think so. It's if you look at Board Game Geek, for example, and the ratings, the usually or the comments even more so, you read a lot of, yeah, it was a very fun game, but it was just a dexterity game, and then they rated 4, and I'm like, you just said it's a very fun game, so what's, I don't know, it's a lot of players are a bit snobbish about what is a good game, and they think that a good game is a good game when it's super complex and deep. But also a very light game can be a great and wonderful good game. I mean, of course, it's all also a matter of what you like, of your taste. But I don't know. It's a reason why people feel uncomfortable sometimes when they go to a games club or something for the first time, when they are not so involved into games and they see all these super I don't know, tense people sitting around these super complex games, and they're like, oh, you cannot disturb me now, and it makes them a bit scared of what they might get when they spend too much time playing board games. So I think we should every now and then think about that it's all still a game and that it's supposed to be fun.
So I want to talk now about the future. So what have you got coming from White Castle in the next sort of 12 months?
Um, ooh, oh, that's such a bad question because I'm already thinking about the next prototypes. So there will be more escape room games. That's for sure coming this year. There will be a wonderful communication game, just one style that will come next year, like end of next year. So I think a lot of stuff might be a bit postponed due to the current production and test issues and so. Um, what else do we have? I should look that up on my website, right? I'm so bad with this. We have like some expansions coming out for our Smart 10 quiz game. What else do we have? Oh yeah, we have an incredible. Oh, that's great. We have Kyoto 1997. I'm not sure if I'm already allowed to say that. Will be a game published by Deep Print Games, which is like that super group of um, of the games industry, including Peter Eggert and Viktor Kobilke and so on. And it's a negotiation game about players being environmental politicians in a climate conference, and they try to einsparen. How do you say? They try to um, get reduce their CO2 output and so on by reducing their luxuries. But of course, you don't want your luxuries to be taken away. You want the others' luxuries to be taken away. So this will be a great game. I also think that we've had this game for quite a while, and nobody wanted to touch it because but who wants to play a game about climate change? And yeah, I think now the time is right for it. We also have an awesome kids game published with Happy Baobab later this year, a Korean publisher, which I think is one of those kids games that connects the kids and the adults. So kids will enjoy playing it, but adults like to play it too. It can also be a nice drinking game. I'm very much looking forward to it. It's gonna have super great components, so I'm looking forward to that. Very soon, there's a cool card game coming up with Huch by Johannes Krenner called Duck. I think it should have already been delivered, but it's delayed. It's a very nice card game. That one of those I told you about that my mom likes to play. This you play a card game, but you can still talk while you play it. And actually, it's what I call it. Altweiberspiele. I like those a lot. So that's coming on. And we're working currently also on a game for the Ministry of Interior Affairs of Austria, like teaching politics to kids, to school kids. But that's also a bit more complicated now because we don't get test groups because it's a game for big groups. But it's not a game in a box, so it's different approach of games, and it's an extraordinary thing that we do right now.
And so, where would you like to see White Castle in the next 5 years?
Where would I like to see White Castle? Well, I'm actually pretty fine where I am right now. Of course, everyone wants to have a Spiel des Jahres or win some other prizes, and that's of course always something I have on my mind. But where I want to see White Castle is generally is that when people talk about it, they're like, "Oh yeah, White Castle, cool, heard about them," and it's nice to work with them because I know that there's a lot of people who are afraid or skeptic about agencies, and there's has been, and I guess there also still is a lot of talk about or the agency, and they take all your money, and what do they do, and so on. But I'd like White Castle to be in a place where if you ask someone randomly, a game designer somewhere, and it's like, oh yeah, White Castle. Yeah, maybe I hasn't even worked with them, but I've heard good things about it. So that's one thing I'd like to have us.
Brilliant. So your final game then is kind of it's a dice roller, and this is Strike. And you said in your notes that it's a game that you'll never get tired of. Why is that?
I don't know. I really don't know. It excites me. It's so weird because actually what you do is you throw a die into a pit with other dice, and then some might tumble and change what they showed before. And if you are lucky, you win dice back. It's so simple. I like the simplicity of the game, and it's every roll is exciting. And I recently played it with some friends, and there's this one situation. That's why it's called Strike. That when you manage that all the dice in that pit show the same symbol, then you all take them out, and the next player has to throw in all of his dice, and that might lead to him losing all his dice. Never mind the details. So, and then I was in a game where that happened like 3 times in a row, which is so super unlikely, but it's brilliant. It's like, oh my god, I have never seen this before. This is great, and that's, I don't know. It's a great game to me. I played it in. Like I always have it with me when I travel, and I started to write the places where I played it inside the box, and it's been in a lot of dirty places already. So I don't know. It's a mystery to me. I love it.
And so fundamentally, do you think games are about, and I guess this is particularly prescient at the moment, what with the COVID thing going on, do you think games are fundamentally about sitting around a table with other people and enjoying their society?
2 weeks ago, I would have definitely said yes. I have played some board games via video conference now. So I think that is also possible, not for all games, but like, yeah, I do think that is what it's about, because it's not the same thing to play a game in an online version. Like I love Tichu, and I really was addicted to it for a very long time. I've never played a single game of Tichu online because it's not the same thing. It's not the same thing when you don't sit opposite to your partner and like next to your opponents, and you look at them and you're like, should I play these 2 kings, or or will they beat it with their 2 aces, or are the aces split? And I'm like, and I look into their eyes, and they know what I want to do because they know I have the 2 kings, and it's like, oh my god, what should I do? It's not the same thing when you play it online. You have to see the other person in the eye. Yeah, and feel that person next to you. It's a completely different thing, and that does not only go for Tichu, but for all the games. It's so much more exciting when you can, I don't know, after a good move, you can I don't know, clap someone on the shoulder or so. It's not the same thing, and the most important thing is that you can look the other in the eye and try to read their strategy or whatever, or even if it's just a luck-based game and you roll that die into that pit and it's like, hey, everybody, look what I'm gonna do. It's, I don't know, it's something that no other medium can provide. No other like regulated sports thing. No, I don't know. Maybe improv theater is something that comes a little bit close to it. I don't know, but not even that. So yeah, it's I think it's always gonna be there, and there's nothing that can replace this atmosphere.
So one last question then. You're heading out towards your cabin somewhere in Niederösterreich, and the car, you go around a corner, the back door flies open, 4 of the games fly out down a ravine into a river and are swept away, and there's only one game left on the back seat of the car. Which game do you hope it is?
You cannot ask me this question. I think the first thing that popped into my mind was Root. I think it's because it's big and nice and has nice components. It's very superficial, but I think that's the reason. I think that I could maybe, if I wanted to, I could create a deck of Tichu cards out of anything. We have done that before. So I think it's rude.
Brilliant. So if people want to get hold of you, they want to see what the agency's up to, how would they go about doing that?
You can find us online on whitecastle.at. Make sure it's whitecastle.at and not .com, because .com is the burger thing. So AT for Austria, whitecastle.at. And there you'll find all the contact details. You'll find also information about how the submitting process works with us, where you can meet us next, at which events, if there will be some, we are going to be in the future, and what games we've published so far. So you should get all the information there and also all the contact details.
Brilliant. Well, Anita Landgraf, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ben. I hope it's not going to be the apocalypse now.
You can support the show in many ways. You can tell your friends. You can talk about it on social media. You can talk about it in your own blog, podcast or video. Or you can support it directly by going to patreon.com/5G4D for a rolling donation, or for a one-off donation hitting the PayPal link at the bottom of the website 5gamesfordoomsday.com. It's these donations that keep the show going. Also, if you want to say something nice about the show, or if you want to say something horrible about the show, you can contact me on Twitter at 5gamesfordoomsday, or send an email to 5gamesfordoomsday@gmail.com. And if I've crept away from the dancing horror and the reality that I'm a twat, I'll see you in 2 weeks for another 5 Games for Doomsday.